Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy N.H.S here, back in another video. I was procrastinating quite a lot, but I decided to make this video because I really wanted to do something with this time, because I always try and make the most use of time. But there was some sort of pessimism about making this video, all these videos. But I decided to go for it anyway. As I often try to wrestle with my own lack of self-belief or self-esteem. So anyway, I decided, as I had this vision or dream for a while for Napoli, I decided to use this time to make the decision to make these videos. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it out there. And I know I do have these habits of, or this habit of like patterns and alliterations, as I often say, but I do try and mix it up a bit and not repeat too much of what I say. But I do sometimes struggle to come up with something new. But anyway, as I say, I hope people out there will enjoy it, especially football fans, and in particular fans of Napoli. And as ever, I would love to know to know what you think. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. And also to take on board any of your suggestions and read your comments and things like that. I'm sure there's something else I was going to say, but I can't quite remember. Anyway, so here goes. Obviously, as ever, this is my dyslexic imagination, I suppose, mad imagination. As they say, there's method to the madness. So I suppose procrastination happens when you have so many ideas and you struggle to decide which ones to go for. So I suppose it's being indecisive. But I'd love to know what you think about procrastination, or if you suffer from it, and if you know any tips, or if you've overcome procrastination and you know any tips that you have. Like some people write a pro and con list or something, or whatever, or find some sort of ways. I often try and do things in list form, or make lists so that I can easily, or more easily at least, organize my time. But anyway, so I'll try and stop laughing, and here goes. So number one, due to my alliterations, I would love for companies that begin with N to invest in Napoli, as I said with the other teams, like companies that begin with I or M to invest in Inter Milan, companies that begin with A or M to invest in AC Milan, things like that. So I would love for companies that begin with M to invest in Napoli. Number two, but at the same time, I would love for as many companies as possible to invest. Like even if some wealthy Arab sheikhs or people from Asia and Africa and places like that want to invest, I think it would be pretty cool, which I hope to come to in more detail. But I think it'd be cool just to have as much investment as possible. But I think it would be quite interesting if companies that begin with N, or using my imagination. I know it's a bit of a quirky, possibly pipe dream, but I think if it did happen, it'd be pretty cool. I'd rather sort of try it and say it and see if it can happen, and fail knowing I tried, rather than not having not tried. Number three, recently I saw advertised like a company called Nut-meg, which is apparently a JP Morgan company which talks about investments, and I think it'd be pretty cool on the subject of alliterations if Nutmeg invested in Napoli. As any investor in football, it's probably good for their PR. Like on their website, they could say part shareholders in Napoli, and especially if other companies, big companies, invest, it would probably be a good investment for them to have for their shareholders and for I think it's a pension fund or whatnot, so it would help people invest. So I think it'd be pretty cool. Number four, also the Norwegian investment fund. I think it'd be pretty cool. I think that's probably one of the biggest investment funds in the world, I think, if I'm not mistaken. If you know, please let me know in the comments. But I think they say on paper, it's on record, it's supposedly the biggest investment fund in the world somehow, even though Norway is quite a small country. I'd love for them to invest in Napoli as a fan of Italian football generally. Number five, also companies like N.S.A, N.S.A, and companies like that investing in Napoli. I think that'd be pretty cool. I know it's a bit of a sort of selfish dream of mine, or maybe even, dare I say, narcissistic, whatever the difference is, to want to see as much investment in Italian football as possible. And as I often mentioned, it's like a guilty pleasure of mine, but I think it'd be pretty interesting if these companies did invest. Number six, and maybe I'll do the thing where I normally like Google companies that begin with N to see if they could invest. To see what companies begin with N, and like post it in the comments, post the link and that sort of thing. Number seven, as I say, I'd love for as many companies as possible to invest in Napoli, and for Napoli to have a connection with Celtic, as I often mentioned, like with the town teams, and I think they already kind of do. The Napoli fans and Celtic fans. I've seen a group on Facebook where it's like Napoli and Celtic, and where they sort of where people who support both teams or have a soft spot for the other team. Like if they're a Napoli fan, they have a soft spot for Celtic, or vice versa. But as I often say, I love for town teams to do that generally. And again, whoever invests in one could potentially invest in the other. Number 8, recently the owner of Napoli, Aurelio De Santos, I think his name is, who's in the film industry, film director or producer or whatever, said that he didn't want to sign any more players from Africa unless they agreed not to play for the nations, which would be a quite hard decision not to play for your nation. And I suppose a lot of teams, not just from Africa, but a lot of teams have, or with players from all around the world, have a problem with club versus country. So but I think his comments were taken by some to be like racist or whatever. But I think in his defence, he probably was saying because they might get injuries if they play for their country. So he was saying he wasn't going to sign them. But again, it would be quite hard to tell them not to play for their country in case they get injured playing for the club, in this case Napoli. But I was thinking it would be quite interesting. I'm stuck in two minds about this, but I think it'd be interesting if Africans invested, wealthy Africans like Dangote or people like that, invested in Napoli, sort of to say if they bought the club off him, or at least bought some shares or whatever, if they would hire more, they could continue to hire African players, or sort of it'd be a sort of cheeky way to sort of get back what he said. Although I do understand why he said that. I think it's not really a racist thing, but it was sort of because of the fact they might get injuries. But if African investors invested, they could still give more opportunities for African players, and also develop academies in their home countries, or people of African descent even. But I'm stuck in two minds, because I'd love for them to also invest in Italian players as well, especially from Naples and all over Italy, really, as a fan of it, especially as a fan of the national team, as well as, or Italian football generally, as well as Napoli. And lost my train of thought, sorry. But yeah, this is often a dilemma I have with Italian teams, like how many overseas players should they buy versus how many Italian players. And I'd love to always see Italian players play at least 3, preferably under 20, preferably Italian under 21 players, so they're developing youth, but they could also develop youth in Asia and Africa as well for the future. Again, as I often say. Number 9, again, I'd love to find more companies that begin with N, but again, just general investors. I think it'd be pretty cool, again, if the Norwegian investment fund invested in Napoli as part of their PR and things like that, as I often say. Given that Norway doesn't have a particularly strong football league, they're not too bad nationally, but their club teams are not really high up in Europe. So I think it could be something that's worthwhile for them. But again, I'd like to put the idea out there to see if it could happen, rather than not try it and not know. And as I often say, I'd love to see like artists for Napoli in this case as well, poets, artists, writers, and people talking about their passion for the club, why they love the club, why they fell in love with the club in the first place, and things like that, and what the club means to them, and that sort of thing. Number 10, again, I'd love for Napoli fans to comment on this video, hopefully positive comments. And number 10, again, I think it's really important to develop youth. And as I've said with the other teams, sorry for repeating myself, but I thought I'd make one for all possible Italian teams as well, or these sorts of videos. But I would love for them to have an account where they, whatever money is invested into that, or whatever money comes into the club, it would go into this account, and 10% of the money would go towards buying even better players. 10% would go towards developing the youth for the future, of course, like 5 to 10 year plans and things like that. 10% would go towards marketing, and half of that, so 5% of the overall profit or revenue at least, or even, would go towards developing, like, again, marketing, like building supporters clubs, Napoli sports clubs, NCSs, they could be called perhaps, all around the world, just like Celtic has, and that's what other clubs have. and 10% could go towards like a foundation, possibly could help people locally and poorer people across the country, Italy and all around the world, especially in developing countries. Yeah, as I say, they could also have football academies in developing countries as well. So I'd love to hear what you think as ever, and hopefully there'll be some positive comments. Hope it wasn't too boring or too repetitive, but yeah, I'd love to hear what you think, and I'm out. Peace and love.